San Diego Comic-Con is always a time for big, huge superhero announcements, but this year it also coincides with the release of one of, if not the biggest superhero movies of the year. We're talking about Deadpool and Wolverine, which just hit theaters literally last night. Now, joining me right now to discuss whether or not this movie is the mutant healing factor the MCU desperately needs, I'm joined by Alex, Amelia, and Tom. How are y'all doing?
Good.
Yes. Clap it up for him. Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Now,
thank you.
you know, some of us have seen the Deadpool and Wolverine movie, and some of us haven't. I'm not gonna name who. It's me. So we're gonna keep spoilers out of this. But the big question is, do we think this movie? I don't know. Does it shake things up for the MCU at all?
Absolutely not, in my humble opinion. So I'm sure we'll go over our individual thoughts. The thing is, I enjoyed the movie. It was a fun 2 hours at the movies.
Yeah.
But I feel like it was kind of marketed as this thing that was going to blow up the multiverse. And I don't want to talk about spoilers or anything, but in my opinion, it doesn't. It's a fun night at the movies and not a lot else. So if you were hoping for that, I would say put those expectations out of your mind and just go enjoy the movie.
So. Okay, so would you kind of echo, you know, Tom's sentiments? Because Tom, you reviewed the movie for us,
yes.
And you gave it a whopping 7.
That is correct, a 7 out of 10, which of course on IGN's scale, as we all remember, is good. It is a good movie.
Yes.
All right, Akeem.
I mean, yeah, I guess it is. Yeah, it's good. I mean, like, also, like, you know, the movie is currently, it's sitting at, what, 80% on Rotten Tomatoes, so.
It's doing really well. People like the movie, and fans especially, are going to love the movie. I do agree with Alex, though, that it feels less like a shakeup and more of like a buying time situation. I wouldn't say that by the end of the movie, the status quo of the MCU is as changed as maybe people might be expecting based on how they've been selling it, how Disney's been sort of marketing it. But it is, what it is an excellent superhero comedy. It is so funny. At every turn, jokes left, right, just coming from everywhere, and really, really works on that front. But in terms of the story and the sort of superhero action part of it, I found those parts a little lacking.
Yeah,
So, Amelia, what's your take?
So I agree that it does not shake up the MCU in the way that they are describing, but for me, the way I always took the marketing was that the shakeup was that these Fox characters were coming into the multiverse. So for me, I got exactly what I expected, so I have no problems with it.
Yeah, and it's funny because, like, you know, looking at the trailer and, like, all the reveals that they made, I feel like that's exactly what it was trying to do. It was trying to, you know, bring in these 20th century Fox Marvel characters into the forefront in the Marvel, not necessarily cinematic universe, because, you know, I don't know how much it touches upon the MCU. So, like, as far as the MCU is concerned, Tom, does this add value to it? You say it doesn't really shake it up, but does it add any value to like the overall MCU?
I think that it's certainly here and there. I wouldn't say that it is an overwhelming addition of all these new facets that we might expect, especially from having watched the trailer again. You know, they were kind of selling it pretty hard. But I will say that the doors that it opens up for future projects are interesting enough so that even though it feels like we're just kind of spending time waiting for the next, it feels like the big stuff's going to come in like Avengers 5 and 6. And that right now it feels like they're still figuring their strategy out a little bit.
And I would say too, without spoiling anything, I really feel like all the characters that are kind of in this movie, I didn't feel like it was opening the door for them to continue appearing in the MCU personally.
Not necessarily.
I feel like it was for Deadpool and Wolverine, not so much for the MCU, if it makes sense.
Yeah, with the exception of one character.
Yes.
Which we can't talk about.
Which we can't talk about. But that's kind of how I felt about it.
Oh, see, I'm kind of curious who this character is now. Yeah.
See it.
There's so many things that I want to say about this movie that I'm just like,
yeah.
You talked about the comedy. There is a bit in this movie, and I cannot say a gosh darn thing about it, but it's one of the funniest bits in any movie that I've seen. And every time this character opened their mouth, I lost my mind. Like, it was so funny. You'll know it when you see it. Like, it's so good.
What I will add to that is, while there's only one character that, like, beyond Deadpool and Wolverine that you're like, okay, they're in the MCU now, it creates a mechanism that opens the door for any 20th Century Fox or in other any 20th Century Fox and other Marvel properties that have been owned by other companies. Yeah. Dodged that spoiler like a champ. It opens the door for them to come in at any time, which is very exciting.
I also love these discussions where we're like, business rights. Like someone who's like, it's so, but it's like,
an IP lawyer to be able to follow the MCU.
And if I said the property, everybody would know what I was talking about.
Well, let's leave that up for speculation until the world has seen the movie. I really want us to talk about though the action sequences, because I feel like from what we've seen, there's like some huge matchups that I think a lot of people have been wanting. So I want you to describe some of the action scenes. Did they get it right?
I think from a character standpoint, the action is really, really well done. They really do a good job of utilizing Deadpool and Wolverine's power sets and their personalities, certainly in the fights. But the actual choreography of the fights themselves and how director Sean Levy kind of covers them is not as exciting as we've seen in the MCU before. Not that when I think of MCU action scenes, I necessarily think of really like insane stuff all the time, especially this deep into the run. It's harder and harder to sort of reinvent the wheel on these things as we go, but it definitely benefits from having a really good understanding of how to make those powers really funny in a fight.
It has very fun action set pieces, but my one complaint with the film is that Levy is not an action director, and it is very apparent throughout those fight scenes, even though they are very fun and funny and will make fans very excited.
Well, the funny thing is I feel like I've barely thought about them since watching the movie. I feel like there's not super memorable, despite having some of the team-ups or matchups that fans have wanted. I came out talking about the one bit that I referenced earlier, not so much like the fights that we've been waiting for so long.
Really? So there weren't any like fight scenes that you saw that were like truly iconic from any of the characters that we saw? Because I feel like that's like, I mean, from what we've seen throughout the various trailers, I don't even know how many did we get, like 16, 20 different Deadpool, Wolverine trailers. Yeah, like I mean, I saw some really cool ones that seemed like they actually choreographed it to music.
I think Deadpool and Wolverine's first fight, which you see a little bit of in the trailer, I think that one of any of the fights in the movie might be the one that kind of takes the cake for ending up being the most iconic from this movie. Because the first time these characters are meeting, it is really well done. You're establishing this dynamic between the two of them through action. One of the sort of rare moments where it feels like the action is serving the story. But it's not consistent through the movie.
Well, and you mentioned the music too. I feel like the music kind of steals the show in some of the action scenes. The music's great, but like sometimes I feel like I was just like rocking out to In Sync sometimes.
I love fight scenes set to songs. Like I am a sucker for when a punch hits when the beat drops. Love it. So the first scene where he's fighting all of the agents was actually my favorite, I think, because it's just so quintessentially Deadpool, which kind of goes back to where people will either be disappointed by this or they'll know exactly what they're going into. Because Deadpool was never going to save the MCU, and they joke about it a lot in the movie with the whole I'm Marvel Jesus. Like, they make fun of it actively. So just the first scene, which means nothing but does set up sort of like the battle-y situation, and they're jamming out to In Sync as this giant battle is happening. Yes, good.
Okay, so we talked a lot about, Deadpool and Wolverine and what it has to offer. I feel like I kind of equate this to like Super Smash Brothers. It just seems like everything is in there. But I want to know, is there anything that, since you all have seen the movie, is there anything that you think the movie like leaves in the dust, like leaves behind, that you were hoping to see?
I will say my big overall complaint about the movie, and I don't know if this is what you're asking, but really what bothered me about it was it made fun of all the multiverse saga kind of narrative crutches, I would say, while simultaneously leaning on all of them in earnest. Like, not in a satirical way, like the plot of the movie. So I wish it kind of left some of the timeline wonkiness in the background, but walking out of Deadpool and Wolverine, I was just kind of like, we need to end the multiverse saga. Can we move on to like the mutant saga? Can we move on to a new thing? Like, that's what I wanted.
Phase X.
Yeah.
Phase X. Yeah, I'm here for it. Like, let's go full mutant. But like, I'm over the multiverse, I think.
My complaint is the most Amelia Emberwing complaint in existence. Marina Baccarin's character whomst I love, and I love her as an actress, did not need to be in this film. She was solely as a prize for Deadpool. And in Deadpool 1 and 2, she has an actual character, Vanessa. Vanessa. She has an actual arc in those other two films, and in this one, she is just there. And for you want to focus on Deadpool and Wolverine, so while I understand narratively why it happened, we just didn't need to have her there. Yeah. Or we could have given her a single scene as a human being.
Well, Deadpool didn't need it.
Yeah.
I agree. I feel like Deadpool has gotten to a place as a character where we didn't need but he loves someone, and I think he's past that.
You know what, I really want us to talk about some the cameos. I know we touched upon it. You know, there are a lot, and we already said there's not gonna be any spoilers here, but there's a debate about the cameos as to whether or not they're just cameos or are they supporting characters. So how did that work for you guys in this movie, Tom?
There's certainly, well, here's the thing, is that there are a lot of cameos, but there are also a lot of variants out in the world.
Yeah.
So while there are a lot of cameos, it's a lot of Deadpool cameos, a lot of Wolverine cameos. But in terms of other Marvel characters, maybe not quite as much as you would expect, but the ones that are there are handled quite well. And there is if you saw Spider-Man No Way Home, Andrew Garfield sort of gets that chance to wrap up his character's arc from the Amazing Spider-Man movies. And there's a little bit of that sort of sense here. Obviously, you know, there's a lot going around about people that do and don't show up in this movie, and everyone's gonna see it pretty soon. But the way that they handle the characters that are sort of supporting roles that have a little more to do is very good, I thought.
Yeah, the answer is it's both. And the internet never likes when there's a middle ground, but there are many cameos, and there are about 5 or 6 supporting characters.
Yeah.
Both exist.
I like to say guest appearances. It's somewhere between, you know, Andrew Garfield in No Way Home and an actual proper cameo. They're guest appearances.
Yeah. I think I called them guest stars.
Yeah.
Well, honestly, that's a good way of looking at it. Well, we will have a much better idea of what's in store for the coming phases of the MCU tomorrow, 6 p.m. Pacific time, when the Marvel Studios Comic-Con panel kicks off in Hall H. We're going to be right here, and we'll be covering it all right here, so stick around. There's plenty more IGN's coverage of Comic-Con to come.